Hey there, brave soul. Before the story begins, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps keep the spooky stories coming. And who knows, it might just keep the skeletons happy. Listen well, mortal souls, for this tale unfolds on the most cursed night of the year, Halloween. When the veil between worlds grows thin, when children masquerade as monsters, and when true evil hides behind the sweetest of smiles. This is the story of the Hendricks family, and the last house they would ever visit on their trick-or-treat journey. It was October 31st, 2019, in the quiet suburb of Millbrook. The Hendricks, parents David and Sarah, along with their twin daughters Emma and Lily, aged 8, had mapped out their Halloween route with military precision. 43 houses, estimated candy haul of over 200 pieces, home by 9 p.m. for hot chocolate and horror movies. But plans, as you'll learn, mean nothing when darkness has other intentions. The twins were dressed as matching witches, complete with pointed hats and tiny broomsticks. They giggled and chattered as they worked their way through the neighborhood, their candy bags growing heavier with each doorbell ring. David and Sarah followed behind, admiring their daughter's enthusiasm and remembering their own childhood Halloweens. Everything was perfect until they reached Maple Street. Maple Street was the crown jewel of their Halloween route, a long tree-lined avenue where the wealthy residents competed to see who could give out the best candy, full-size chocolate bars, gourmet treats, even small toys. But as the Hendricks family turned onto the street, something felt wrong.
The street was completely empty. No other trick-or-treaters. No parents with strollers, no teenagers causing mischief. Just the Hendricks family walking alone under the amber street lights, their footsteps echoing strangely in the silence. "Where is everyone?" Sarah whispered to her husband, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. David shrugged, but his eyes were scanning the shadows between the grand houses. "Maybe we're just early. Or late, the girls are having fun. Let's finish this street and head home." But as they approached each house, something became increasingly clear. These weren't the same decorations they'd seen during their daytime scouting trip. The friendly jack-o'-lanterns had been replaced with grotesque, leering faces. The cute skeleton displays now featured bones that looked disturbingly real. And the fog machines that had produced a gentle mist now belched thick, choking clouds that smelled of sulfur and decay. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I don't like the way that pumpkin is looking at me." Sarah followed her daughter's gaze to a massive jack-o'-lantern sitting on the porch of 147 Maple Street. Its carved eyes seemed to track their movement, and its jagged mouth appeared to be chewing on something dark that dripped from between its triangular teeth. "It's just the flickering candle, sweetheart," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. The pumpkin's eyes were definitely following them, and she was certain she could hear a wet, grinding sound coming from its hollow interior. They continued down the street, collecting candy from houses where the residents seemed off. A woman in a witch costume whose fingernails were black with dirt or blood. A man dressed as a vampire whose canine teeth looked far too real. An elderly woman who gave out full-size candy bars, but whose reflection didn't appear in the window behind her. "Last house!" Lily announced cheerfully, pointing to the end of the street where a massive Victorian mansion sat shrouded in shadows. That's when David noticed something that made his blood run cold. Every house they'd visited on Maple Street was now dark, Not a single light remained on. Not a single decoration still glowed. It was as if the entire street had been turned off behind them. The Victorian mansion at 1330 Maple Street loomed before them like something from a nightmare. 3 stories of Gothic architecture, complete with gargoyles perched on the corners and wrought iron fencing that seemed to writhe in the shadows. The house was the only one still decorated, still lit, still alive. Orange lights flickered in every window, creating dancing shadows that looked like figures moving from room to room. The front yard was a masterpiece of Halloween decoration. Tombstones with names that seemed to shift and change when you weren't looking directly at them. Skeleton hands reaching up from the earth, and a fog machine that produced perfectly normal-looking mist. "This is it, girls," David said, trying to inject enthusiasm into his voice. The grand finale. But Sarah had stopped walking David. She whispered, grabbing his arm, "Look at the mailbox." The black mailbox bore the house number 133013, but underneath, in elegant script, was a nameplate that read, "The Hendricks family. Welcome home." David's mouth went dry. That's just a coincidence. Maybe the previous owners had the same name. Emma and Lily had already run up to the front door, their excitement overriding any fear their parents might be feeling. The massive oak door was carved with intricate designs that seemed to move and shift in the flickering light. As the girls approached, the door slowly creaked open on its own. A figure appeared in the doorway, a tall, thin man in an immaculate black suit. His face was pale as bone, his hair silver white, and his smile revealed teeth that were just a little too sharp to be entirely human. "Welcome home, Hendricks family," the man said in a voice like silk over broken glass. "We've been expecting you for such a very long time." Emma and Lily looked back at their parents with confusion. "Mommy, how does he know our name?" The man's smile widened. "Oh, sweet children, I know much more than your names. I know that Emma lost her first tooth 3 months ago. I know that Lily's favorite bedtime story is about the little rabbit who gets lost in the woods. I know that Sarah has been having nightmares about losing her children. And I know that David has been seeing things in the shadows that he's afraid to tell anyone about." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She had been having those nightmares, terrible dreams of her daughters disappearing, of searching through endless corridors calling their names. And David, she'd noticed him looking over his shoulder more often, jumping at sounds that weren't there. "Who are you?" David demanded, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. The man stepped aside, gesturing them into the house with one impossibly long white finger. "I am the host of this evening's grand finale, and you, dear family, are the guests of honor." Against every instinct screaming at them to run, the Hendricks family found themselves walking through the front door. The interior of the house was even more magnificent than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns on velvet wallpaper. Antique furniture gleamed under warm lamplight, and the air smelled of cinnamon and apple pie. It felt like home. It felt like the home they'd always dreamed of having. "Please make yourself comfortable,"
the pale man said, gesturing towards an ornate sitting room. "I have prepared something very special for Halloween night." Emma and Lily ran ahead, marveling at the toys scattered around the room, toys that seemed designed specifically for them. A dollhouse that was an exact replica of their real home, complete with tiny figures of their family, books filled with stories they'd never heard but somehow already knew by heart. "This is amazing!" Emma squealed, picking up a doll that looked exactly like her. But as Sarah watched her daughter play with the doll, she noticed something horrifying. When Emma moved, the doll moved too, not in Emma's hands, but on its own, mimicking her every gesture with a slight delay. "David," Sarah whispered urgently. But when she turned to find her husband, he was standing transfixed in front of a large portrait hanging above the fireplace. The portrait showed a family, a mother, father, and twin daughters standing in front of the very house they were now inside. But the faces in the portrait were their faces. The Hendricks family, painted in oils as if they'd been living in this house for generations. Beautiful work, isn't it? The pale man appeared beside David, his voice making them both jump. "It was painted in 1897. The artist captured your likeness perfectly, don't you think?" "That's impossible," David stammered. "We weren't even born then. Our families aren't from this area." The man's smile never wavered. "Oh, but you were. You are, you always have been. Time, you see, is not as linear as you mortals believe, especially on Halloween night, when the boundaries between what was, what is, and what will be become flexible." Sarah grabbed Emma and Lily, pulling them close to her. "We need to leave now." But when they turned toward the door, it was gone. The wall where the entrance had been was now covered with the same velvet wallpaper as the rest of the room, as if there had never been a door there at all. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," the pale man said, his voice now carrying an edge of cold amusement. "You see, every Halloween night, this house requires a family, a real family with real love, real bonds, real life force. The previous family has served their purpose for the past year, and now it's time for them to rest." As he spoke, other figures began to materialize in the room, shadowy forms that gradually became clearer. A family of 4, their faces hollow and gray, their eyes empty sockets. They stood perfectly still, like mannequins, but their mouths moved in silent screams. "Don't worry," the pale man continued. "It's not painful. You'll live a wonderful life here. Every day will be Halloween. Every night will be filled with tricks and treats. Your daughters will never grow up, never face the hardships of the world outside. And you, dear parents, will never have to worry about losing them again."
The air in the room grew thick and heavy, pressing down on the Hendricks family like a suffocating blanket. Emma and Lily began to cry, finally sensing the danger their parents had felt from the beginning. The toys around them started to move on their own, dolls walking with jerky, unnatural movements, toy cars driving in circles, books flipping their pages as if reading themselves. "Please," Sarah begged, holding her daughters tighter. "Take me. Take David. But let our children go. they're innocent. The pale man tilted his head, considering innocent. My dear woman, innocence is exactly what this house feeds on: the pure, untainted love of a family, the genuine joy of children, the fierce protection of parents. These are the most delicious forms of life energy. David stepped forward, his fist clenched. You want to fight? You'll get one, but you won't touch my family. Oh, but I already am. The pale man laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of bones. Look at your daughters, David. Really look. David turned to see Emma and Lily, and his heart nearly stopped. The girls were becoming translucent, their edges blurring like watercolors in the rain. They were fading, becoming part of the house itself. Daddy, Emma whispered, her voice echoing as if coming from very far away. I can't feel my hands. But then Sarah remembered something. A story her grandmother had told her about Halloween night, about houses that fed on families, about the one way to break their hold. The true spirit of Halloween, she whispered, then louder. The true spirit of Halloween isn't about fear. It's about community, about neighbors caring for neighbors, about the living protecting each other from the darkness. She grabbed David's hand, and together they began to recite the words they'd taught their daughters. Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat. If you don't, I don't care, I'll pull down your underwear. It was silly, childish, innocent, and it was real. It was the true magic of Halloween, the joy and laughter that children brought to the darkness, the way communities came together to create something beautiful from something frightening. The pale man recoiled as if struck. No, he hissed. You belong here now. The contract is sealed. But Emma and Lily, hearing their parents, began to giggle despite their fear. They joined in the chant, their voices growing stronger as their forms became solid again. The house began to shake, the perfect decorations cracking and crumbling. The mailbox. David suddenly understood. We never signed anything, never agreed to anything. The nameplate. That's not a welcome, it's a claim. But it's Halloween night, and on Halloween night, the real magic belongs to the children. The family joined hands, and together they began to walk toward where the door had been. With each step, their conviction grew stronger, their bond more powerful. The house fought them, walls shifting, floors tilting, shadows reaching out with grasping fingers. But love, real, honest, human love, proved stronger than the house's hunger. The wall cracked, then shattered, revealing the front door once again. The Hendricks family ran through it, out into the night air, down the front steps, and didn't stop running until they reached the end of Maple Street. When they turned back, the house was gone. In its place stood an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and marked only by a small sign. Coming soon, Millbrook Community Center, a place for families to gather safely. But every Halloween night, if you know where to look, you can still see 1313 Maple Street.
It appears to families who are lost, who are broken, who are desperately seeking something they're missing. And it offers them everything they've ever wanted for a price. The Hendricks family never spoke of that night again, but they never forgot it either. And every Halloween since, they've made sure to stay home, doors locked, lights off, protecting other families by refusing to feed the hunger that still prowls the streets on October 31st. Because some houses aren't meant for the living, some doors should never be open, and some invitations should never be accepted.